Hey, Sens fans, welcome to season 5, episode 15 of the Senstennial Podcast. The full crew is here tonight. Love to have Bennett back. That dude is constantly on the go, calling up the Sens, trying to get some interviews. Never been successful, but that doesn't stop him from trying. So, shout out to Bennett.
Our Twitter DMs are just filled with him just interview, and the admin has never responded.
And none of those DMs are to like the Senators. I'm using the pod account and I'm just sliding into like Jessica Chastain's DMs as like interview.
You're just sending interview requests to like the Senate of Canada. You're like, they have senators there.
Yeah,
that's right.
Robillard hearing Twitter account.
Yeah.
So
hey, are you guys interested in a sponsorship?
Man, we'd have to rep one of their hearing aids, which actually as a drummer that might make sense. So I'll have to hit up definitely. A Robillard eventually. Fun fact. Oh, I think we're gonna get copyright claim for that. But one of my friends actually used to work as a secretary in a Robillard clinic.
Yeah.
Fun fact, she was not much of a hockey fan.
Oh.
But apparently her husband was quite the big hockey fan. So that's my claim to fame of knowledge of the one and only Julia Robillard.
Love it.
Anyway, why are we here today? You may be asking if you are watching or listening to this, and that is a very fair question. We're going to talk about all the latest Sens news. Sadly, they have played all of a single game since the All-Star weekend, but it was a banger of a game in the way that it ended, and we'll definitely touch on that. And then we'll touch on a few other roster things. But you know what? Who cares about that stuff? Let's talk about it. Everyone's probably heard enough about this topic already, but Ridly Greig, he gets a breakaway against the Toronto Maple Leafs in Ottawa. There's a lot of Leafs fans in the crowd, and he sends a slapper into the back of the net. He tries to drive that bad boy through the twine, and he gets all of it. 4 seconds or something left in the game. And as he's skating off towards the glass, Rielly beelines for him and cross-checks him in the side of the head. Greig goes down. Trainer comes out. He seemed to be fine. He was at practice this morning, which is great to see. I'll get Bennett's thoughts first. What'd you think about this whole kerfuffle that went down?
Oh, God. I mean, it's all of the discourse has been about as idiotic and mind-numbing as you can imagine it would be. The accounts that you expect to have terrible takes have terrible takes. The accounts that you expect to be normal are normal. Lots of people are asking themselves, the really difficult, questioning here, which is worse, shooting a puck slightly harder than usual into an empty net or attacking a person with a wooden club. Obviously, it's impossible to say which of these is worse. One would get you jail time if it happened on the streets. One is something completely innocuous that hurts nobody. So obviously they're equivalent.
I will say,
sorry, go ahead.
If you take a random slap shot on a person on the street, you probably will get at least charged.
Yeah, but there's nothing. There was nothing in the net,
unless you yell like 4 or maybe just blame it on like shitty accuracy. But anyway,
yeah,
I digress. Continue. Beloved and great point here.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we like Greig. He's been having a really good rookie season so far. We can touch on that later, but he has a lot of fire and spunk. And after outplaying the Leafs, despite, like you said, having the crowd in our arena being like 75% Leafs fans, he decided to finish with a bit of flair, maybe shut them up a little bit. Sens fans love to see that. Nobody has a problem with that. Obviously, people in media, most of whom are Leafs fans, whether they're open about that or not, a lot of them had a problem with it. The Leafs organization and players were all very, immature about the whole thing. I think, Morgan Reilly is facing a possible suspension for the cross-check. it's unusual to see someone like him lose his cool like that. But, the Leafs are a team that are often accused of being soft, mostly because of their many playoff failures and their well-known mental fragility. So I know a lot of Leafs fans are like, oh, it's good to see some fire. And, you have Keefe saying, oh, I didn't have a problem with what he did and stuff.
It was appropriate.
He said
That's
it was appropriate, yes. And I mean, on one hand, like, of course, like, he's going to defend his player. He's not going to like throw him under the bus like that. But also, just like maybe try winning a playoff series or something, and people might have like a little bit, people might, I don't know, just anyway, it's just the entire Leafs organization has behaved as embarrassingly as you imagined that they would. They are coddled all the time in media and everything, and told how great and special they are, despite having done nothing to earn that reputation. And then so when things go against them, they get very like, they throw their hands up in the air and they're like, oh, how could we possibly have to deal with stuff like this? Anyway, it's just it's funny at the end of the day. It is, when we watched it in the bar on Saturday night, it was funny. We laughed immediately, we laughed after, and we're still laughing today. So really, I mean, what else can you say?
Yeah, and thankfully Greig wasn't hurt on the play. He, like I said earlier, he was back at practice, so good to see that. Matt, what did you think about that whole situation going down?
Well, it's one of those things where Bennett and I were talking about it before the podcast. It's one of those things where, yeah, I would say if it was my team getting a slap shot into the net, I would probably be pretty salty about it. But I would probably be more salty about the fact that my player was stupid enough to hit another player in the face with a cross check and then probably be done for looking at precedent earlier this season with David Perron on Artem Zub, probably get 6 games. How dumb do you have to be to do that? Like, quite frankly,
especially when they're fighting for a wild card spot.
Yeah.
Right now. Usually they're one of the top 2 teams in the Atlantic, at least over the past, half decade. Not so much this season, and losing Rielly, I was about to call him Ridley, losing Rielly for 5+ games because he was offered an in-person hearing, so that's generally indicates that he could get 5+. That's rough. Like, yeah, there's still lots of season to go, but missing arguably their best defense. Actually, I don't even think it's arguable. I think he is their best defenseman.
Yeah.
For 5 games, like, who knows what could happen over those 5 games? It could come back to bite you once the final stretch of the season comes around.
And it's especially sort of like silly when you think about it, because like if Morgan Reilly had been angry and he had like checked him after the play into the boards, or if he had, dropped the gloves and invited Ridley Greig to throw down or something, nobody's having this conversation today. It's like, Greig styled on them. They took exception and tried to, have something out with him fair and square. Like, no one would have a problem with that. Leafs fans would be like, love to see Morgan Reilly standing up for the team. Sens fans would be like, oh yeah, Greig got under their skin. That's great. And we're not having this conversation today. The fact is that Morgan Reilly lost his cool and he did a bitch play trying to hit someone in the head with your stick when they're not expecting it and they're not prepared for it. And it's like, you can't do that. That's, maybe like down the road, we'll say that, that this might have an impact on the Leaf season and stuff, but like ultimately, like if you're letting an innocuous play like that get under your skin that badly, then you're probably don't have kind of like the mental fortitude to put it together and stick the landing this season anyway.
Yeah. And I look at how everything kind of shook out, and it has a big impact on the Leafs, losing Morgan Reilly. Ridley Greig's fine. He's back at practice, and it is what it is. I think I have a bigger if he had done exactly how you said it, Bennett, if Rielly, shoved him into the boards, that's fine. But it's the fact that like he went for the head. And everybody's a forensic expert over in Leafs land, apparently, because they're breaking down videos like they were Eugene Melnick trying to find the exact moment where Matt Cook had the idea to slice Erik Karlsson's Achilles. But I'm seeing weird takes. It doesn't matter where it started.
Yeah.
It's where it ended up. Like, if you went to shoot somebody in their leg and shot them in the heart, I have bad news for you. You just got a murder charge and not assault with a deadly weapon. Like, your actions have consequences. And this is where I'm getting to. I have a huge problem with a lot of people that have a huge platform going on and saying, I have no problem with what Morgan Reilly did. I'm specifically looking at people who have been very much like against unnecessary physicality in the sport. And I'm gonna pinpoint Jennifer Botterill, because 5 weeks before, she was saying how you can't do what who was it, Ryan Lomberg on Nick Perfetti,
And also, she was challenging one of the other hosts about that.
yeah, Donald Brashear. I remember that. I was in her corner for it. And then she turns around and says, well, Ridley Greig deserved it. And then other people, Elliot Friedman did it. Essentially, like, he's saying, it probably shouldn't be, but it will be because everybody's up in arms about it. It's like, no, the guy got cross-checked in the head. And if you can't take your Leafs glasses off for a second to realize how dangerous that is for the game, then you shouldn't be in a position that you can be spouting off your stupid opinions.
And one I was really disappointed in was David Amber. I was really disappointed that he kind of said that, he's asking for it, doing something like that. I was like, what the, like, David Amber is a guy who, I still have respect for him. I think he's a great host and everything, but that was just so disappointing to see him come out with a take like that. Like, there is so much discussion over the need to change hockey culture, and so many people are saying that, I've seen the quote, the fuck around and find out a lot. People even saying that to our Twitter account. You see people out there saying, oh, well, if he hadn't shot into the net like that, well, Rielly wouldn't have gone after him. And it's not about that. Ridly Greig could have done a triple backflip, spun around, done a 360 on his skates like a beautiful figure skater in the Olympics, and then did like a little, what do you call that, globetrotter spin of the puck on his hand, drop it to his stick, and then top shelf it. Like, who cares? Like, if Auston Matthews, the Sens were down, 4-3, had pulled their goalie, and Auston Matthews comes in on a breakaway and slaps it into the net in front of home fans, and obviously there wouldn't be as many Ottawa fans in Toronto. Their ticket prices are insane.
They'd love it.
Yeah, but
they would go nuts, and everybody's talking about the code.
And even me, I would obviously be irritated to see my team lose, especially to a rival. But at the same time, like, I totally understand that Ridly Greig, he sees Leafs fans in the crowd, albeit more than a Toronto player would see Sens fans in Toronto. I understand that, but he sees all these fans. He wants to rub salt in the wound. He wants to send them home. He knows that the Sens fans in the crowd are sticking it out, and it's for the fans. It's an entertainment industry. These guys would not be playing hockey if it wasn't for the amount of money that is involved in these big sports leagues. So anyway, at the end of the day, I think if it's an entertainment business, go for the flair, go for the dramatic. I have no problem with any player on any team scoring an empty net or however they see fit. But going after a guy instead of, like you guys mentioned, just doing a little shove in the boards to get your message across, like, hey, that wasn't cool. Going for a two-handed cross check to the neck head area is just ridiculous. Like, it's such sore loser mentality. And I don't know. I won't ramble on and on about it, but it was just big loser vibes to me.
And I think the one thing I kind of want to cap off, and you kind of touched on it, is like the toxicity behind hockey culture. And it all really stemmed from this like code of honor. But everybody's talking about this code of honor, but then they're going and saying like, oh, you're a fucking pussy. Oh, you're a bitch. Like all this stuff. And they're spewing vitriol. Ian Mendez got called a diversity hire because, he said you can't do that in the NHL. Other members of the media that just so happen to be colored that said you can't do this were getting attacked and saying you need to leave Canada. All this stuff. It's a game. Like if this jersey didn't exist, my life would just have less hockey in it. And that's really it. Like
less heartbreak too.
Yeah, probably. But like it's a game. I'm sorry that your feelings got hurt. But don't take it so personally. You weren't playing in it. Like you're just watching it. Yeah, maybe you paid to see your team come and the opposing fans fill up our barn. I mean, I don't care. Like, good for you. I'm proud of you for holding on to the commitment that is watching a losing team for as long as you have, and the generational trauma that is developed from watching mediocrity. But like, just let people enjoy the game how they want to enjoy it without saying, oh, there's a code of honor and ethics and all this bullshit. Like, get out of here with that. Like, hockey is supposed to be an inclusive game. And if you have not seen in the last 4 weeks that hockey is not inclusive whatsoever, like, what did you say on Twitter, Matt, to that one person?
Hope and seethe.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, no, that sums it up really well. Can't add anything to make that better. How do we feel, guys? Was that a good vent session?
Oh, I just want to like maybe go back. We dunked on the Leafs without Jake Sanderson too.
That is true, actually. That's a very good point. And
Jonas Corposalo, a .912 save percentage.
They took one of the shots on him away from him. He should have had a .914, guys. I'm telling you.
This is Corpy erasure.
Oh man.
Justice for Jonas.
Yeah. Since the Sens won, what is it? I think I may have not included the game against the Sharks, where they, had a really rough game against a bad team. But since the game afterwards, can't remember who they played, he's had a 900 save percentage, guys. We are progressing here. We are getting to a point where we're getting league average goaltending. You'll love to see it.
Let him cook.
Actually, you know what? That's technically like above league average. I think league average is like 898 right now, baby. So we're rolling. That 900.
In my mind, league average goaltending is like 908.
Yeah, it's been down this year across the board, but
yeah.
What on a positive note about goaltending, Anton Forsberg is scheduled to be coming off the long-term injured reserve with a move of Zack MacEwen on waivers.
Yeah. So
how do you boys feel about that?
You know what? I will say Zack MacEwen did look better in his time, like in however many games he's played under Jacques Martin. And I'm not saying it's necessarily correlated to the coaching change, but he's just looked better. So I don't mind him being that 13th, 14th forward guy who plays in Belleville. He's really not going to get claimed on waivers. I doubt it anyway for the next couple of years, unless someone is desperate for a warm body who doesn't mind dropping the gloves, even if they lose fights. Like, he exists and he does the occasional thing where I'm like, wow, this guy's a fourth liner, but sometimes he has a laser beam of a shot. So, yeah, I think the important news here is that Ottawa's getting a backup back. And thankfully, Forsberg, he's been rough, obviously, this season. Both Ottawa's goalies have had rough seasons. But he's shown in the past that he can be reliable for the Sens. I find that technically he's fairly sound. He seems to always be in position. He doesn't rely on like diving across the crease to make saves and all that. So it'll be nice to have a tandem of like two guys where if Korpisalo continues his better play and Forsberg can kind of come back from injury and just put up a similar like 900 save percentage, I think that gives Ottawa like a nice little tandem going into the offseason, and maybe management reevaluates then. But I'm looking forward to seeing him back in the lineup.
Yeah, I'm excited to have Forsberg back, especially because if Korpisalo wasn't playing, that meant Sogard was, and whoa, that was some horrendous goaltending.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing him, and he came in and just looked not good at all.
No, it wasn't a high bar for him to outperform Korpisalo Forsberg, and he still was lower than the bar. And hey, I think Sogard has a bright future, but he obviously needs more time to cook in the AHL, and that's fine. He's like, what, 22 years old? Goalies don't usually come into their own until they're mid to late 20s. So give him time, give him reps, let him come into the NHL in little stints, get some games under his belt, and just let him develop.
I think Bennett I know he just doesn't like Sogard.
I think Bennett wishes.
I'm looking at this stat line and seeing. I was trying to piece it together. Like he's played in 4 games and he has 1 win and 1 loss, which means he's been pulled twice.
Yeah.
He's rocking like a 50% or like pulled percentage.
Oh yeah.
And an 825 save percentage and a 509 goals against.
Yeah, I mean, one of those games didn't count as a loss because the Sens were able to come back with Korpisalo in net and win. That was against Nashville.
Right. Yeah, it's he has not really shown much in the last couple of seasons. I think that he needs like significant time in the AHL before he gets another call up, because I don't think like he's really done anything to deserve like a lot of consideration at the NHL level right now. And I'm glad to see Korpisalo trending somewhat in the right direction. I'm glad to have Forsberg come back. Hopefully he can, show a little bit of consistency like he used to. But it is this goalies, the Senators goalie stat lines make for pretty bleak reading at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of that does have to do with how things were. I would say, in the last 5 games, Korpisalo that he's played, he's been quite solid. And I also have to say, in those games, the team has been very solid in front of him as well. And I hope that is continuous. There are a lot of frustrating things Korpisalo does. I think he oversaves. I've said that before. And I think Forsberg has the more complete package of stuff. But he hasn't shown that this year. So I hope he comes back and doesn't have to face, the absolute horror fest that was, because was he hurt and DJ was still around, or did he get hurt under Martin?
Who? Forsberg?
Yeah.
I think it was under Martin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They hadn't figured things out yet. And it, knock on wood, obviously it does seem like they're really trending in the right direction. In the next 3 games, they're playing Columbus, Chicago, and Anaheim. All of those are worse teams in the standings than we are. And you would hope that those are games that, you can kind of come in and stat pad. I'm not going to get my hopes up because it is the Ottawa Senators, for example, but I will give them credit. They've been playing very, very good hockey lately, and, they're making me believe just a little bit.
So. You never know. I think Money Puck said the Sens have an 8% chance of making the playoffs.
I feel like that's gone up. So
I think it was after the win against Toronto, to be honest.
Yeah, well, yeah. And that's without Jake Sanderson, as I said. And
yeah,
that's another tough one.
Yeah, hopefully he comes back soon, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Sanderson coming back will be huge. I think we've seen enough games from Travis Hamonic in a Sens uniform. I don't think we need to touch on that any more than we have in previous episodes. I'm sure he's
In
great.
previous seasons, we've got a long archive of reasons why Hamonic shouldn't be on this team.
I just have a playlist that I haven't shared publicly yet, and it's just like Bennett rips Sens players to shreds, and it's all just clips of Bennett just yelling about one player or another.
That's right. Usually Hamonic, sometimes Korpisalo or Matt Murray,
Basically any goaltender since Craig Anderson, I think.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, and
Anders
Anders
Nilsson. Anders Nilsson was pretty
man. He or Mike Condon during the 2017 season. Like that guy was like, he saved our season. Came in, saved it.
I remember going to the first game that Mike Condon started at home for the Sens. I think it was against the Vancouver Canucks. He had a pure white goalie helmet. Respect, because that was a look. And dude got a 1-0 shutout. The one goal was scored because I think it was Demko who started. It could be wrong, but the goaltender like shot the puck out, and then Hoffman like intercepted it, and before the goalie could get back in the net, he just kind of like flung it towards the net and it went in. It was a terrible goal. And the Sens won 1-0. And I was like, I'm happy that Condon got a shutout, but I feel like robbed from a game. Like this game shouldn't have been a win for anybody in regulation, but it is what it is. That's my Mike Condon story. Thanks for listening. On that note, gents, I guess we have 3 games against teams that are worse than the Sens, which is, pretty hard actually, because the Sens are in 28th in the league. So this is some big developments here to have 3 teams in a week that are worse than Ottawa in the standings. That is crazy stuff. So we'll see how those go. Columbus missing some key players. Anaheim is Anaheim, and Chicago doesn't have Bedard. So looking pretty good for the Sens on paper anyway.
Yeah, I mean the Sens are a team that have shown the ability to take points off of teams that weren't prepared to face them, expecting an easy walk. Hopefully, Martin is very diligent. I don't think he's going to let the Sens go into these games with the same attitude. I also wanted to just apply a little bit of love to Ridly Greig and Shane Pinto and Vladimir Tarasenko. I know we were just talking about Greig earlier and how he's been have had a very strong season so far. He's rocking a cool +19 on a team that has very few players in that range, except for Vladimir Tarasenko, who's also close to it. And that third line since Pinto's come back of Pinto, Greig, and Tarasenko has been super effective. It's got to be one of the more effective third lines in the division, at least. And it's been if it's just a shame that it took us until this stage of the season to have it on the team, because I think that if we'd had this kind of lineup earlier, and if we had pulled the trigger on a new coach earlier, we might have a greater than an 8% chance of making the playoffs. So it's great to see the chemistry these players are having, and they're driving play at 5-on-5, which is amazing because that's something that the team struggled with a lot last year and at the start of this season. But it's just a shame that it took us until this point when the season is already mostly lost to get it together. But credit where it's due. They've been super effective, and it really makes it a lot easier when you have more than just one line that can pose a threat.
Yeah, and people had said when Martin was hired that it would take about 15-20 games probably for the Sens to really come into their own under the new coach and kind of deploy his tactics and all that. And yeah, initially I think in Jacques Martin's first, I want to say 13 games, he was 3-9-1 as coach. And now he's 10-10-2. So the team has really turned around, especially in the last couple weeks. Well, excluding the break, the All-Star break, has really come around in the last few weeks and playing much better hockey. And like you said, Bennett, I think if they make this move earlier in the season, their chances are looking a lot better at a playoff berth. it is what it is. You can't change history, but you know, coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah, and you look at that third line, and I think a lot of teams, even cup contending teams, look at that and say, "Wow, like not we don't have that depth." And I think Ridley Greig and Shane Pinto are two players that are going to turn some heads in the future. As one is a defensively responsible rat, and the other is a defensively responsible goal scorer. And Pinto is, I believe he's a point per game player since coming back in. He had 3-point effort against the Leafs. Always good at the dot, and plays a 200-foot game. And having two of those guys stapled to a cup-winning sniper is always a good problem to have. And I hope that we can keep both of those guys for the long term. And who knows what happens with Tarasenko? We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. But if he stays and that just becomes a perennial third line for us, I can't say I'd be complaining.
Same here. Tarasenko said he's looking at all options, whatever that may mean, before the deadline. I imagine the Sens will try to capitalize on his value. Maybe he likes the city of the team enough to come back next season. It rarely happens, but who knows? Also depends on Ottawa's cap outlook, but guess we'll see what happens. Stranger things have happened, so who knows? But yeah, on that note, not too much else going on in Sens land these days. So we'll catch you next week, and we'll see what's going on, how the Sens have done against 3 bottom feeders. And we're coming back. We're going to be in high spirits. The Sens are going to be doing great things. Korpisalo is going to have like 3 straight shutouts. Now he won't get, now we won't get any, even if the odds were already low. Thank you. This is the Senstennial Show. Mic drop.
Go Sens go.
Go Sens go.